Welcome to the presentation on copyright and fair use in the Internet. My name is Jamie Edwards, and this presentation is for CIMT 647. Before interacting with any of the material in this presentation, I would like you to appraise how familiar you are with copyright. There are no wrong answers for the first question, but I would like to determine some prior knowledge of the class to start the presentation. Prior to watching the videos, what were your assumptions about copyright, fair use, or Creative Commons licenses? After watching the videos, did you have any misconceptions about copyright or fair use? How can copyright and fair use affect the professional, personal, or educational aspects of your life? What is the importance of interpreting copyright as it relates to media literacy? By the end of this presentation, you will be able to interpret elements of copyright as it relates to the Internet, identify the differences between fair use, Creative Commons licenses, public domain, and open source resources, analyze the 4 criteria for fair use, and determine the correct application of copyright in your own work. From watching the introductory videos, we can define copyright as a form of protection provided by the laws of the United States to the creators of original works of authorship, including literary, dramatic, musical, artistic, and certain other intellectual works. Copyright is important because it protects the ownership of created or original works by an author. Copyright is essentially about copying, distributing copies, and our cultural understanding of authorship and ownership. Copyright ensures the incentive that the author or owner has control over created material and will receive appropriate compensation for distribution or use. The author or owner of a copyrighted work may grant permission for an individual or group to use a portion or the entirety of a work as a whole. Technologies have changed copying dramatically, but our cultural understanding of authorship and ownership haven't really changed much. Copyright has only changed slightly to accommodate new technologies to include both digital and non-digital works. How long does copyright last? The length of copyright for a particular work depends on several factors, including whether it has been published, and if so, the date of first publication. As a general rule, for works created after January 1st, 1978, copyright protection lasts for the life of the author plus an additional 70 years. For an anonymous work, or a work made for hire, the copyright endures for a term of 95 years from the first year of its publication, or a term of 120 years from the year of its creation, whichever expires first. For works first published prior to 1978, the term will vary depending on several factors. Here's an example of a resource called the Digital Copyright Slider. Here you may be able to determine the copyright status of a work from the publication date. As you can see, anything before 1923 would be considered in the public domain. As you move the slider forward, you can determine what kind of permission may be needed for other works by publication date. How is copyright violated? Copyright infringement occurs when a copyrighted work is reproduced, distributed, performed, or publicly displayed without the permission of the copyright holder or the legal right to do so. What is not covered by copyright? Ideas, facts, data, anything created by the U.S. government, and works with expired copyright. The moment you create something, your work is automatically copyrighted to you or your employer. If a created work is something that may have value, such as a song or a photograph, you may want to register a copyright for that work to provide proof of ownership. How do we work with copyrighted material? You could ask permission from the owner of the work. You can determine if you are using the work applies under fair use. You can seek works with Creative Commons licenses for defined applications for uses without having to ask permission of the owner. Or you can find alternative resources that are not subject to copyright, like works under public domain or open source materials. The fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction in copies or phonorecords, or by any other means specified in that section for the purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research, is not an infringement of copyright. Fair use is the flexibility of copyright in the U.S. Because of the flexibility of fair use, each possible use of an existing work must be looked at in detail before an impression can be formed as to whether that use is fair or not. As an example, online courses are not covered under fair use. There are certain situations that apply towards fair use: journalism and news reporting, criticism, teaching in the classroom, scholarship, research, and parody, to name a few examples. Here are some fair use misconceptions. Using less than 10% of a work is not infringing. The law places no word limits or percentages on the amount of work you can use. If you get permission to use the work, you can use it more than once. There is nothing written in the law about seeking permission from the rights holder for subsequent use. However, you should perform a fair use analysis each time to ensure that your use falls within this exception. Fair use doesn't apply for educational use. While educational uses are heavily favored under the law, you must also carefully consider the other three factors. Even if it's for educational purposes, no particular use qualifies as fair use. It's okay as long as I don't get caught. Should your use be called into question by the rights holder and you are found guilty of infringement, you could be held liable for legal penalties of $30,000 per work per use. There are 4 criteria for fair use: the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of a commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. You must consider the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and sustainability of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and the effect of the use on the potential market or the value of the copyrighted work. The fact that a work is unpublished should not itself bar a finding of fair use if such finding is made upon consideration of all of the above factors. You must consider all 4 factors and determine which outweighs the others. None is guaranteed, and there's not a clear line, and not all 4 criteria have to be met necessarily. This resource is called a Fair Use Evaluator. You can enter a document and determine its fair use. Here is a checklist that you may use to determine fair use: determining its purpose, nature of the work, the amount, and the effect on the work. Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that enables the sharing and use of creativity and knowledge through free legal tools. Creative Commons licenses are not an alternative to copyright. They work alongside copyright to enable you to modify your copyright terms to best suit your needs. Creative Commons licenses promotes the use of created works and allows individuals to use and share their works to the public. Creative Commons licenses are based on symbols. The CC license is the symbol for a Creative Commons license. The BY symbol is an attribution license, which lets others copy, distribute, display, and perform your copyrighted work and derivative works based upon it, but only if they give credit the way you request. There are subsequent layers to Creative Commons licenses. The share alike allows others to distribute derivative works only under a license identical to the license that governs your work. A no derivative symbol lets others copy, distribute, display, and perform only verbatim copies of your work, not derivative works based upon it. And the non-commercial symbol lets others copy, distribute, display, and perform your work and derivative works based upon it, but for non-commercial purposes only. Creative Commons licenses can be layered in various combinations to determine appropriate uses by the copyright owner. Here is a resource to search Creative Commons license material. You can look through Google Images, Flickr, YouTube, Wikimedia Commons, SoundCloud, and various other resources. Here are a few resources if you wish to research further. Open source projects, products, or initiatives are those that embrace and celebrate open exchange, collaborative participation, rapid prototyping, transparency, meritocracy, and community development. Open source commonly refers to software that uses an open development process that anyone can use and manipulate. There are also additional materials available for open source, such as textbooks and journals. Please feel free to review any of the resources on the screen. How does copyright apply to media literacy? There are legal obligations to ensure copyright holders' rights are not infringed. The ability to promote good practices to model for learners, and to inform learners how to avoid copyright infringement. There are moral and ethical obligations to attempt to generate original work. Some guidelines to follow is don't steal published works, ask permission of the author or owner, give credit and cite resources appropriately, seek alternatives to copyrighted material to include Creative Commons, public domain, or open source materials, or you can avoid copyright issues by creating your own work. Thank you for watching this presentation. Please participate in the discussion section provided.